wedged between the Foglia River Valley to the south and that of the Marecchia to the west. The Sasso di Simone Nature Reserve lies at the easternmost point of Tuscany, surrounded by the region called Marche. Almost as if to mark the boundary between the two regions, these two rock formations rise over the surrounding rolling hill country like two massive pillars. Unlikely as it was that their position should arouse military interest, it nevertheless did, following that of the spiritual. The flat summit of the rock plateau was probably the site of ancient pagan rituals, and around the year 1000 saw the construction of a Benedictine monastery dedicated to the Archangel Michael. A few hundred years later, in the middle of the 16th century, Cosimo de' Medici decided that the Sasso would be an ideal location for a military citadel from which to control his extensive territory. The project for the Città del Sole, as Cosimo had christened his citadel, ran aground definitively around 100 years later, without having ever reached completion, despite having been chosen as the seat of Sestino's government in 1575. In addition to the obvious construction-related difficulties, were those posed by the rigid winter temperatures which characterized that period. The sum of the difficulties proved insurmountable, leading to the citadel's total abandon when finally, in 1663, even the last of the military personnel had left. Exploring today amongst the clumps of enormous ash and maple trees, which line one edge of the Sasso, traces can still be found of the citadel's main road, and the foundations of the outer walls of the military buildings can be found beneath the vegetation. As can the old cistern, partially filled in but still effectively gathering rainwater, and a monument commemorating the laying of the citadel's first stone. The territory around Sasso di Simone, like much of the Apennines, has been settled by man ever since prehistoric times, and his effect on the landscape and vegetation has been profound and lasting. Most of the major changes began to be made in the early Middle Ages, around the year 1000, when a great deal of land was under the administration of the Archangel Michael Monastery. The reserve's meadows, including those found atop the Sasso, provide the most evident testimony to this phase, which witnessed the transformation of vast forests into pastures and croplands, which were used and expanded up until the end of the 19th century. This continuous usage, often excessive, resulted in an increase in erosion and extension of the badlands. By the middle of the 20th century, as fields were abandoned and grazing reduced, the woods began reclaiming part of the territory that had been taken from them. But there are still some cultivated fields and wide meadows. Their conservation is one of the main objectives of the protected area. In the springtime, a hike up to the meadows atop the plateau provides a great opportunity for observing orchids, delphiniums, lilies, daisies, and a host of other varieties, while in the less luxuriant fields and on the eroded hillsides, far less generous in terms of flower growth, thrive other species, not as showy perhaps, but nonetheless of significant ecological value, such as goosetongue and spiny rest harrow.
Dicevamo che nella fecondazione delle orchidee il trasporto del polline avviene soprattutto per opera di insetti e le masse polliniche vengono letteralmente attaccate sulla testa dell'insetto. Vedete, sono verdi in questo caso, e quando poi l'insetto andrà in un fiore che ha maturato il gineceo, ci sarà la fecondazione del fiore.
Continuing towards Sasso, the rock face and the huge pile of rubble at its feet rewards us, if we look carefully, around the rocky shelves and among the stones, with other botanical rarities, species which have specialized in adapting themselves to rocky soil. Black buckthorn, olive daphne, serviceberry, round-leaf saxifrage, leopard's bane, to the little sedum hen and chicks and bluebells clinging tenaciously to the crevices in the rocks. The nature reserve's forests also reveal how deeply rooted is the influence of man. The most accessible woods, like the oak groves crossing the southern part, have been highly exploited both for wood and for grazing, until the Grand Duke decreed limitations on their usage. The mixed woods, which wrap around the more impervious and inhospitable north face of the Sasso, have maintained a more natural diversity. The unique landscape of Sasso di Simone, with its wealth of fossils and minerals hidden among its limestone or buried in its clay, has been sparking the curiosity of naturalists since the 18th century, when the first documented expeditions were carried out. More recently, the protected areas have attracted the interest of scientists researching geomorphological and tectonic phenomena linked with the origins of the Apennines themselves. This wealth can be explained by the belabored geological history of Simone and Simoncello, partially analogous and contemporary to that which gave rise to the formation of the limestone outcroppings of La Verna and San Marino. Almost 15 million years ago, in the Miocene period, massive tectonic activity was causing the Apennines to fold and rise. Much of this activity was occurring beneath the sea and was responsible for piling layers of rock formed in previous eras one upon the other. Among the formations affected by this movement was the multicolored argillite, which still today form the bare badlands around the Sasso. In a slow but inexorable movement towards the east, a warm and shallow sea was formed on the clay, soon populated by bryozoans, bivalves, and sea urchins and other marine life. A few million years later, the sea was gone, leaving behind the shells and skeletons of those creatures developed on what had been the seafloor to eventually fuse themselves into the limestone. The clays continued to move around, transporting this enormous hunk of limestone into its present position, where the rains, rapidly eroding away the clay sediments, have revealed it. Time and the rock's internal stress have led to the fragmentation of the limestone plates of the massive blocks of Simone and Simoncello, as well as that of the smaller Peschio. Evidence of this long history can be found in the abundance of marine fossils and minerals. At the Nature Reserve's Visitors Center, the formation and characteristics of these minerals are displayed and described, along with other natural environments. Thanks to the great variety of environments, ranging from meadows and different types of woods to limestone deposits and badlands, the Nature Reserve's biodiversity is impressive. The grazing meadows host dung beetles and many other species of insects, food for the reptiles and the rare birds that live in the zone, such as the shrike, the wheatear, the tawny pipit, the woodlark, and the linnet. Frequent sightings gratify the visitor, and along the trails are traces of nocturnal animal activity: badgers, roe deer, boars, porcupines, and even wolves, which, according to some people, have never entirely vanished from the woods of Sasso. The Nature Reserve is home to a number of species of special interest to conservationists, many linked to grazing and farming practices still carried out here to this day. In particular, there are birds here which, while once commonplace, have all but disappeared in other parts of the Apennines as a result of major changes there. One of the most important tasks of a nature reserve is to study and carry out field research in order to better protect the environment. Early in the morning, on a lovely spring day, we followed a team of ornithologists.
Questi ambienti sono una sorta di crocevia che sono frequentate dagli uccelli che provengono dagli ambienti più diversi che si trovano qui nei paraggi, cioè dai boschi, dalle zone coltivate, anche a notevole distanza. Sono ambienti quindi nei quali, soprattutto d'estate, si riescono a fare studi abbastanza coerenti degli uccelli che vivono in queste zone, anche con uno sforzo di cattura relativamente basso. Abbiamo anche catturato degli uccelli che vivono ad esempio in vicinanza dell'uomo, come la rondine o come il pigliamosche, oppure abbiamo catturato uccelli che vivono in boschi d'alto fusto, come il fiorrancino, oppure uccelli che si possono definire ubiquitari perché vivono un po' in tutti i tipi di ambienti, come la capinera e il merlo. Abbiamo avuto anche oggi la fortuna di prendere un uccello che in questo tipo di reti difficilissimamente viene catturato, ed è un uccello della famiglia delle allodole, la tottavilla. È un uccello abbastanza comune in queste zone e questa è una cosa molto importante perché la tottavilla è un uccello in diminuzione sul quale sono concentrate le attenzioni per esempio dell'Unione Europea per la conservazione, proprio perché soprattutto nei paesi dell'Europa centro-settentrionale è una specie che è molto diminuita di numero. È un'allodola, vive praticamente soltanto nel terreno, vive quasi sempre vicino al bosco e utilizza gli alberi soltanto per posarcisi, e il maschio diverse volte si appollai sugli alberi per cantare. Il torcicollo è un uccello che ha un comportamento particolare che gli dà il nome. Quando è disturbato, se qualcuno si avvicina alla cavità del nido, l'adulto che sta covando, maschio o femmina, comincia a torcere il collo, appunto. Sembra, almeno così sostengono alcuni etologi, che sia per simulare un serpente. Il torcicollo è uno strano uccello perché appartiene all'ordine dei pisciformi, cioè il gruppo dei picchi, però non è un picchio, non costruisce egli stesso la cavità del nido come fanno gli altri picchi, ma le deve trovare già fatte, però ha una cosa in comune con molti picchi: si nutre quasi soltanto di formiche. Il torcicollo è un uccello che è in gravissima diminuzione. Ed è importante anche raccogliere delle informazioni sulle sue strategie di migrazione, sulle sue strategie di accumulo di grasso, eccetera, per cercare di capire perché sta avvenendo questa drastica diminuzione che l'ha portato a estinguersi in diversi paesi, come ad esempio in Gran Bretagna.
Sestino maintains many of the traces of the Roman city of Sestinates, capital of a territory which ran from the Tiber River, crossed the Alpi della Luna mountains, into the heart of Montefeltro. Numerous ruins and monuments remain, a bathhouse, the relics of a Roman villa, as well as those of public and religious structures. The Archaeological Museum houses a number of artifacts, embracing 4 centuries of history, with statues of women, magistrates, busts of residents, the Sestino Venus, dating back to the 1st century, and an Augustine mausoleum testifying to the city's grandeur and importance. Further evidence of the area's importance, even in medieval times, beyond that expressed by the prevalence of ancient villages, where these magnificent frescoes were recently discovered and carefully restored by the Arezzo Superintendent of Fine Arts. The frescoes, coming from different periods, have now returned to adorn the little church dedicated to Saint Donatus at the edge of the Sasso di Simone Nature Reserve. As we have seen, their value is based on their rich natural heritage and on the many traces of human activity carried on here until just a short time ago. One way to discover the protected areas of the Tiber Valley, as elsewhere in the province of Arezzo, is to participate in the many initiatives promoted every year to give the public a chance to experience nature in the first person, to approach the lives of plants and animals, and to get to know a bit of the remarkable history and traditions that characterize this area.
To make visiting the nature reserve, founded in 1996, a more rewarding experience, a number of facilities have been set up, such as the visitor center in Sestino, parking areas, rest stops, a nature trail, and the Casa del Re Mountain Lodge, all easily reached and located along the various itineraries which cross the protected area. Ideal for excursions, whether on foot, horseback, or bicycle.
The Sasso di Simone Nature Reserve, together with the other Tiber Valley nature reserves and local protected areas, make up a consolidated system dedicated to the conservation of the most important flora and fauna of this part of the Apennines. Its management, with the support of the region of Tuscany, is headquartered in the province of Arezzo, in close collaboration with the Tuscan Tiber Valley mountain community and the municipality of Sestino.